One, this is Nate Miller, and this is my action research project presentation. My major is assessment, curriculum, and teaching, and then my concentration is in integrative STEM education. I teach for the School District of Lancaster at Wickersham Elementary School, and I'm a fourth grade teacher, so this project was with my fourth grade students. The overall purpose of my action research was to assess the impact that having students create their own word problems had on students' understanding of word problems and their ability to solve word problems. So the study examined the overall effects of student-created word problems and the correlation it had to students' ability to solve mathematical word problems and write their own word problems. I decided to do this because I've seen over the years a lot of struggling with word problems overall, and this is probably the most challenging thing that I've done with my students in regards to maths. So I just wanted to see if we switch things up and see if something comes out of it. So the research question that I focused on was, what effect does having students write their own word problems have on their ability to solve word problems in mathematics? As far as the design of my action research, I use quantitative and qualitative data. So my quantitative data, which is actually, that's the part that I focused on the most, but the qualitative data was used to help me make instructional decisions and actually just carry out everything that I did with the action research. But in regards to the quantitative data, I had the students complete a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. So these were both summative assessments. Both assessments included 4 multi-step word problems. They were different word problems on each assessment, but very similar to each other. And then each assessment also included 2 problems in which students needed to write their own word problem for equations that were provided. So on the assessments, I gave the students two equations that had that were multi-step, and then the students had to write their own word problem to match that equation. And I'll talk about that a little more on one of the following slides. And then as far as qualitative data goes, I had students use self-assessments. So this is something that we just do in our district, in our grade level team. So they use the 1 to 4 scale. The 1 to 4 just correlates with below basic, proficient, and advanced in regard to the state PSSA scores. So students understand, like, we have learning targets for each one of those levels, and then students just rate themselves with where they're at. I used the mid assessment. So this was just like after about a week and a half, I took the pre-assessment data and just compared it to the mid-assessment. This was formative. It wasn't as, it was just having the students solve word problems and then writing their own. I more so just used that just as a reference point. I didn't actually use that data in my overall analysis of the action research. And then the last thing I used was teacher observations. So just monitoring what students were doing each day, seeing what was going well, what wasn't going well, listening to the student conversations as they worked together through this. We took a half an hour every day during this time to work on writing word problems, solving word problems, and just anything related to this. So it was kind of bouncing around the room and just hearing what the kids had to say was what decided what I was doing the following day then. So then in regard to findings, my 2 biggest takeaways were the ability to write word problems improved, and then multi-step problem solving skills increased. So I'll talk about the students actually writing the word problems. This was what I was most surprised about, because I still thought just within a 3-week window this would actually still be a struggle for them. But the pre-assessment average was 28.9%, and the post-assessment average was 65.8%. So you can see on the data chart to the right there, I just have all the students just randomly assigned numbers, and the blue bars represent their pre-assessment score, and then the red bar represents their post-assessment score. So you can see some kids went from 0s to 100%, some kids just stayed stagnant with the 0 to 50, but we didn't see any decrease in students' ability to actually write the word problems, which was awesome. So as long as the word problem matched the equation, I wasn't worried about anything specific, like as just far as how creative it was, I guess I should say. As long as the wording that students chose to use matched the equation that was provided, I gave them the points for that assessment. So I was very pleased to see how well that actually worked out. And I mean, this was probably the focal point of everything that we did for those 3 weeks. So the kids, I mean, from pre-assessment, they, to be honest, didn't really have any idea how to do this. They've never done it before. And then by the end of it, really, really enjoyed it overall. Like their engagement was much higher than typical when you talk about word problems. It was also really good to see that amount of increase in just a short amount of time. And then the other takeaway was multi-step problem solving skills increased. So this was also encouraging to see that because of those writing word problems over and over again, just getting used to using the language, their actual scores increased on their ability to solve too. So again, the blue represents the pre-assessments, the red represents the post-assessments. Each one of the kids, their score either stayed the same or went up. And then the class average went from 51% or 51.3% to 71.1%, which is awesome. So overall, my three conclusions that I drew from this action research were: by having students write their own word problems, they're required to not only understand the mathematical vocabulary related to the word problems, but they also need to be able to show their understanding of how to structure the phrasing in their problems so that it matches the provided equations. So it kind of took away the computation end of things with the word problems, and more so the kids had to really focus on the language choice and the vocabulary that they were using so that the problem actually made sense, matching the equation that was provided. This was definitely the most challenging thing that we did with the kids, or that I did with the kids, but then this was the part that we really started drilling then, because the students were really able to break down what the equation was representing, and then to break down the choice of words that they needed to use to actually write a problem that matched that. Another thing that really stood out to me was through the integration of students writing their own word problems, teachers also receive clear evidence of where students are in relation to mathematical standards because of the scaffolded layers involved in being required to write word problems for provided equations. So it's really easy to take a assessment and just say, oh, the student got this correct or incorrect just based on their final answer. Or if you wanted to break it down and look at their work and look at, did they complete the first step? Yes. Did they complete the second step? No. Okay, I'll give them half points for that, or something like that, however you wanted to score it. Spinning this into having the kids write their own word problems, it really shows you like specifically where they're at with their ability to not only understand the equation itself, but understand how to actually set up a mathematical situation related to that equation. I saw a lot of kids, they would write problems and like identify the first step or a step within the equation, but they wouldn't write about the second part. Or they would add information to the word problem that wasn't actually related to the equation. And then if you take that and look at some of just their assessments that we just do in class that weren't actually part of this action research, it kind of was eye-opening on where like the thought process that's going through some of the kids' heads. So overall, I came to the conclusion that integrating student-created word problems into mathematical instruction does lead to students' ability to solve word problems. Just with the data alone, I mean, a 3-week window, and yes, we spent a ton of time doing this and we really drilled it, but the data alone shows that there's that increase, and this is definitely something that I want to take into future years and just work with the kids and integrate this into all of the units rather than just using it with algebraic concepts like I did this time around. So I look forward to questions and feedback that you guys have, and overall just thanks to everybody for a really good semester. I took a lot out of this class.